basically. Hi, in this video I'll be talking about pressure volume loops, which are basically a relationship between left ventricular volume and left ventricular pressure. So I'm just going to label this graph real quick. On the x-axis we have left ventricular volume, and on the y-axis we have left ventricular pressure. And these graphs can be especially difficult to understand, especially in med school. So I just hope that by this video you may get an idea of them. Yeah, so I'm just going to take a point here. So I'm just going to name it A. So at A, what actually happens is that it's just a point, it's at this particular left ventricular pressure and at this particular left ventricular volume. I'm just going to say that mitral valve closes. So I'm just going to say that this point is basically, it represents the end of diastole, and the mitral valve is closing at this point. So since this is the end of diastole, and obviously the mitral valve has closed, so that means in a normal heart where there is no regurgitation of any sort, there is no way more blood can enter into the left ventricle, right? So in this case, basically the diastole has ended and the corresponding volume can be mentioned and can be labeled as end diastolic volume, right? So this is basically the point A. The volume at point A is end diastolic volume. And while we're at it, I also want to mention that since the mitral valve is closing at the point A, so that means we are getting the S1 heart sound at point A. Now what we have is the left ventricle is basically a closed chamber at this point, because obviously the aortic valve has not opened yet and the mitral valve has closed. So basically left ventricle is basically a closed chamber now. And now what the systole will occur and the left ventricle will start to contract. Now the thing is, since the aorta is not open, the mitral valve is not open, the blood has nowhere to go, so the pressure will increase, right? So basically, as you can see, on the y-axis, which represents pressure, the pressure is increasing, right? The pressure is increasing, but the volume is staying the same, because obviously there's no way out or in for the blood to go. So this phase is what we label as isovolumetric. I'm just going to write it here, contraction. So this is where the isovolumetric contraction takes place. Isovolumetric meaning the volume is the same and the heart is contracting, so that means the left ventricle is contracting, so that means it's contraction that's taking place. So we've reached a point B. I'm just going to label it as B. So at this point, what actually happens, since obviously systole is going on, so what we have is that the left ventricle, the aortic valve will open. This is the aortic valve, so it will open because of the increased pressure in the left ventricle. When it reaches a certain point, it basically opens up the aortic valve. So I'm just going to label the point B as the point where the aortic valve is going to open up. Now the aortic valve opens, which means the blood is obviously going to go out of the aorta real quick. So this is what we call diastole. So basically the blood is going out, and then we have reached another point, which I'm going to label as C. Now from B to C, what we have seen is that the volume is obviously decreasing, right? From B to C, the volume is low, as you can see from the y-axis. The pressure is more or less the same, left ventricular pressure. So yeah, that's basically it. So at C point, this is the point which I'm going to label as C. This is the point where the aortic valve is going to close. Now all of the blood has gotten out of the aorta, out of the left ventricle, right? So now the aortic valve has to close. So at this point, the aortic valve closes, right? So all the blood has gotten out, the aortic valve has closed. Now it's the time for left ventricle to actually relax. So the left ventricle relaxes, the pressure keeps on decreasing, decreasing, the volume stays the same more or less, right? I'm just going to, the volume stays the same more or less. So this is the phase what we're going to label it as isovolumetric relaxation. And it completely makes sense, right? Because obviously the aortic valve has closed, the mitral valve is not open yet, so left ventricle is basically again a closed chamber, but this time this is relaxing, right? It was contracting on the way from A to B, but it is relaxing now. That means the pressure is decreasing. So this is isovolumetric relaxation. And I'm going to label this point as D. So at D, what actually happens is that this is the point where mitral valve opens. Now, since mitral valve has opened, I'm just going to erase it. Now that the mitral valve has opened, this is the mitral valve, right, from left atrium to left ventricle. Now all the blood is going to rush in. All the blood is going to rush inside the left ventricle, which is going to basically the heart is again going to go into systole later on. It is just filling that is taking place. So this phase is going to be your diastole, right? So this is what it is. It just goes from here to there. So what we have is we went from point A to point B to point C to point D and then again to A. So this is how it goes. This is how it completely goes. And this is what you call a normal, pressure volume loop. Now there are some deviations here and there because like what will happen if the preload increases, what will happen if the afterload increases, and what will happen if the contractility increases or compliance increases or decreases for that matter. So all these things will be dealt with in another video. Yeah, so that's it for this video. Thank you.